Okay, hi YouTube. Kept meaning to post this one, but I kept forgetting the details. But I mean, that I wanted to do it. So anyway, here we go. I've just remembered. After that ambulance fiasco thing, a couple of months later, my head was that done in. I thought, well, I've heard about it, that people can get stitched up by corrupt authorities. But I thought, well, now it's happened to me. And it's different when it happens to you yourself, So I prayed, as you do sometimes, we've all done it, a lot of us. Why is this happening to me? But less than a week after asking God that, how can the police do that? How can they function? What's going on? What's going on around here? I sat on a bench in town in the high street on my own, and I will name him because he said it in public, in company. A police officer, a PC, whom I'd previously known from Kidderminster in 1980, about 1989. What happened was I was arrested in Kidderminster in 1989, and by this officer, PC David Benfield, and there was a warrant out for my arrest for non-payment of fines to go straight to prison. For the second time, my fault, motoring offences, I just didn't want to pay the fines. And when I saw Dave in the Waitrose when he arrested me, I said, "Oh, you effing wanker, I was horrible, I abused him." And he said, "There's no need for that, I'm only doing my job." I did that because, apart, or as well as having a chip on my shoulder, then a friend of mine who worked in Kidderminster Police, he was blind, but he worked in the comms room, Andy Rybalka, a good friend of mine. He's died now. He died in 97 when he was 37 years old. He'd said, the cops keep saying to me, "Pete, what you doing hanging around with that scum?" And he told me, he said to them, "Well, he's never robbed off me, he's never done anything to me, he's been polite to my parents, he's been in our house, he's been in my flat, blah, 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 for years, he's been fine with us. So, unless he does something against us," and the cops didn't like that he was associating with what they called scum. So that's why I abused Dave Benfield. I just assumed every cop judged me like that and had it in for me. Well, Dave didn't. Right, moving forward, but moving back rather to where I was in the high street. Now, I'd seen Dave Benfield when I moved to Worcester in the early 90s. I recognised him in church. And I went up to him and I said, "Dave, you're a Christian? I never knew." And he said, yeah, I've been for a long time. And I said, "So when you arrested me and I abused you, it was about 10, 12 years ago then, you were just doing, you were one of the ones that, you wouldn't have judged me." He goes, "No." He goes, "I knew the mess you was in, but, I'd never had any dealings with you. I had to do my job. There was a warrant out. You hadn't paid your fines, you'd refused to pay them." So I said, "Dave, I'm sorry about..." He goes, "Let me stop you there. There's no need to apologise." And I said, there is, Dave. Let me speak. There's every need. There was no need for that. And it must have been, it can't have been nice for you, and I deserve to go to prison. So he said, don't worry about it. It's forgotten. It was forgotten long ago. I forgive you." Well, right, okay, Dave approaches me in town after that ambulance fiasco. He's in uniform, he's on duty, and he says, "Hi, Pete." I said, "All right, Dave." And he says, "Look, I think I really believe I'm supposed to tell you this." And now I've got to try and remember how he worded it. There was a cop with him. I think it was a CSO. Yeah, who I didn't recognise, I'd never seen before. And Dave's telling me all this stuff. And he said, basically, you've been through a lot, you've been, basically, you've been unfairly judged, and in the court as well. And he said, and I think I'm supposed to tell you God understands what you're going through, you know, and He doesn't think bad of you, and He understands. And also, I think I'm supposed to tell you, being a police officer on the job, you know, and I said, yeah, I prayed to God, like, is there any Christian cops? Do they exist? Is there any genuine cops? Is there Christian cops? How do they cope with it? Like, with dodginess, how do they cope? And he said, well, just like me, of course, he says, I'm very open about my faith. I try and be honest. Everybody knows about it. He said, a lot of officers that know me, you know, in Worcester and elsewhere, treat me like a leper, because they know I won't compromise. If they break the law they're supposed to uphold, I'll report them, because if I don't, then I'm as bad as them, you know, for remaining silent. So he says, and he said it's led to me being extremely distrusted by officers who've got something to hide. And he said it's got that bad that I've had to, I haven't had to, but I've ended up recording everything all the time, like voice recording. And he said the stress of having to do that, like, you know, just live your life like that. And he said, I said to God a while back, I'm not going to do this anymore. I don't have to do this. You know, this doesn't seem... I've had enough of this. It was just me not trusting you, you know. I shouldn't have to record everything, you know. So he stopped doing it. He said, but some days just getting through the shift, you know, it's like the enemy within. And I said, the enemy within, I said, officers against you that are corrupt. And he said, yeah. And officers sitting on the fence who know they should report other officers but won't. You know, they know, because by law, obviously, you know, the police aren't above the law, not by any means. They're with great responsibility, with great power comes great responsibility, you know. But he said the enemy within, sometimes it's been all I can do is to get through the day. So I just wanted to say that, Dave Benfield, great guy. I saw him again once in another, how can I put it, nasty police incident in Worcester. But that's part of a separate story and one of the last ones I'm going to tell, unless any more start happening again as a result of these YouTube videos. Whatever. So yeah, one more, but that's not connected with this story. That's a few years into the future after this story I just told you. Something that happened quite a while back. But yeah, Dave Benfield. There is Christian police officers. Yeah, absolutely. There's a Christian. I forget the exact name of the terminology, but there's an organisation within the UK, like Christian. I think it's called Christian Police Officers, and you know. I've know a little bit about this organisation, these people, Christian police officers, and from what I understand, especially from watching YouTube videos a lot, if there's something that's a bit, how can I put it, they know that, you know, there's an incident and the officer is a devout Christian, you know, he won't lie, he won't cheat, he'll do everything by the book, as he's supposed to, as he swore an oath to the Queen, you know, truthfully. Certain incidents, like they'll send Christian police officers to, and that's great, you know, it's like, how can I put this? It was almost like an oxymoron, but in a good way, you know. I think some of God, I'm just trying to recall. It's difficult. People on YouTube that are doing expose things, but in a certain way, and they've sent, instead of sending like the boys, if you get me, they've sent Christian officers, and it's been dealt with fairly. Anyway, YouTube. God bless Dave Benfield. I don't know if he's still alive, but he's retired. Thanks for listening.